Good evening, everybody. Please take note of the emergency exits to the side and the back of the room. In case of an emergency, please follow directions from our staff, leave in an orderly fashion. A reminder, we are a smoke-free and a vape-free school district. Smoking and vaping are not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. This is also a hate-free and a bullying-free school district. Bullying-free school district. Moving on to items.
The administration requesting approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1 and C7.
C1 through C7, can I have a motion? C1 through 7. Yeah, we're gonna hold, we have an issue. Excuse us, folks, just hang on 1 second. Is everybody else's agenda correct? Are you ready? I just want to make sure I can be more full. The April 2nd minutes, or would you like them voted on separately?
Well, it has to be voted on separately. But it has to be voted on separately because I'd like to have them tabled. There was a correction I needed to make and I didn't get it in time.
Okay, so let's just pull item 2. We don't have a motion yet, so why don't we just pull item 2? Is everybody okay with that? And then vote on the next meeting?
The administration requests approval of board consent items reflected in C1 and C3 through C7.
Can I have a motion? Mr. Lulu, seconded by Mr. Barry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item D.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. First thing I want to start off by saying that I sort of appreciate everyone coming out and the show of solidarity for sort of the struggles and challenges we're facing. One of the toughest things in leadership is to balance polarities that exist in life. And what I mean by that, while there's a lot of tension in the room, there's also a lot of joy in our district. And that's why our students are here, and other great things happening in our school buildings and across our district. So I want to present my superintendent's report with enthusiasm and fun, not because I want to validate how some people may be feeling today, but to validate the feelings of the students, the teachers who have been impacting these students due to some of these remarkable and extremely positive events that have happened over the course of the last 2 weeks. So having said that, I want to get started. First and foremost, I have the privilege of stopping by the Julia Nossi Scholarship Fundraiser at Bellport Middle School. I've been here 3 years, and unfortunately, the first 2 years I had a conflict. But this year, I had the opportunity to stop by. I was really impressed by the skills displayed by the staff, although I don't know if I was too happy with some of the aggressive plays that I witnessed. But the event was really well attended. We have a great community that came out to support, from our youngest learners to our oldest learners, from staff members to parents. Of course, it's always a pleasure when some of our notable alumni come, like Mr. Miss Arella Garantes, who currently is in the WNBA and plays for the Chicago Sky. She's always very supportive of our school district and appreciative of the time she spent here. During the game, I was approached by Mr. Glenn McAvoy, who helps organize the event, and he asked whether or not I'd be interested in playing in next year's fundraiser, and I committed to him that I would. But I just want you to know that I do have amazing basketball skills. Moving on. And that, yes, students, that's AI generated. Moving on, I had the privilege of attending Bellport High School's College and Career Fair. There's a lot of interest and enthusiasm shown not just by the students, but by the colleges, the employers, and the armed services and civil service people that are here. It was such a great event, I think, a great opportunity, one certainly that I didn't have as a student, to really explore some future options. Again, we emphasize in South Country that we want our students or our graduates to either be enrolled, we have plenty of colleges represented, enlisted, and several branches of the military service present, or employed. And so we have community members and community organizations present to help sort of guide students in making choices and even seeking out immediate employment for the summer. So very thankful for everybody who participated. It's always a great show of support from our community and community organization. Trustee Felice there had a good time petting a horned lizard from Australia, which is pretty cool, which was provided by SEED, which is also another local organization. I'm very thankful for our local elected officials who come out. Pictured there is our legislator, Dominic Thorne, that comes to a lot of our events, and Joe Gershow's office is also represented. A great event. Kudos to the high school staff and everyone who participated. Not photoed, but deserves a shout out is our culinary program that put out a wonderful spread for all of our visitors. So big shout out to our culinary program. So more general happenings. I got to participate in Bellport Village's St. Patrick's Day Parade, which ironically was April, and we had some representation from our high school. Actually, our Latin dance club came out to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which I love because it just shows the inclusivity of our community and how we get to celebrate each other's culture. Mr. Frank Prada, who's the Bellport Fire Department chaplain, was honored, and he was a grand marshal of the parade. We also had some elected officials there as well. A great event. I got to hang out with Wolfie from Stony Brook. I also had a fantastic time at Brookhaven. I went to visit the building for just a small visit with Dr. Raymond, and I got to walk around, and I was invited to a PE class. And I got to tell you, being a superintendent can be stressful, but when you get to hang out with young learners, it's pretty fantastic. I got to participate in some parachute fun. It was the first time I did it in my life, and little did I know you could actually have a dance party underneath the parachute. The kids were having an awesome time. The credit to Ms. Benuti, Mr. Jockman, who really provided the students with a great experience that was really enjoyed by everyone who was there. Some of our high school students got to participate in EF Tour's trip to Europe over the April break. I just got to share some of their photos. They had a fantastic time. I'm not going to front, I was somewhat jealous. I wish I would have been there, but they got exposed to great history, culture, food, and perspective by visiting Paris, Normandy, and London. And of course, we travel internationally, especially with friends. It creates lifelong memories. I also wanted to update the board and the community on our strategic plan. Many of you here participated in the planning process that occurred in the fall. We haven't forgotten about it. We received a draft of the plan, which is pretty marvelous. We brought that plan to our local strategic planning committee, who's working on some edits on the draft, and we're looking to launch it for the 25-26 school year. Included in this manual, or this action plan, are revised vision, mission, and core values, an action plan that spans 5 years for the school district with measurable goals, quarterly updates that will be held at board meetings in the upcoming school year, that's 25-26. And this process and this product here, which features actual photos from our district, which I love, and even we use stock photographs. But this process is a combination of input from the entire South Country community, including parents, trustees, staff, administrators, and lots of teachers. So I want to thank everybody for their efforts. We're looking forward to unpacking it and launching it for the 25-26 school year. We're talking about a blueprint for excellence. I also got to visit the high school last night for Bellport High School's evening of excellence, and it was a very much an excellent evening. We love studying or observing and acknowledging student achievement. It's one of the most favorite things we do because our students make us really proud and do some pretty remarkable things. But what makes tonight even extra special is the fact that our students, the class of 2025, acknowledge teachers that were big impactful in their lives from each of our buildings. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Brookhaven Elementary School's Christine Napolitano, Burn W. Kurtz's Jacqueline Ward, Craver Street Elementary School's Corinne Figueroa, Frank B. Long Intermediate School's Nicholas Merlillo, Middle school teacher Brianne Torrey. And high school chemistry teacher Christine Galante. Again, this basically demonstrates the impact teachers make, and an impact we do not take for granted. Not from my end, not from the trustees. So thank you for all your efforts and being so impactful for these children's lives. I can't imagine what it's like to be a first grade teacher and having a senior recognize the impact you had from years ago. And I also want to give a shout out to our top 3 students, our valedictorian, Kishabi Shaw. She's also a Quest Parade Scholar, one of a handful from the country who's getting a full ride to Rice University. So fantastic accomplishment. Our salutatorian, Maya Dixon, is going to be attending my alma mater, Cornell University. So really proud of her. And our SAS, Lily Seif, will be attending Binghamton in the fall. So big accomplishment. There really is. This again is a credit to the K-12 instruction here in South Country. Moving on, I want to give student athletes a big shout out. There are some here. I'm going to give you accolades in a minute. But I want to share something that we really don't talk about that much, which is academic accolades from our students. First and foremost, if you look at the boys varsity basketball team, the top 75% of the team's averages were 92. That was the average of 75% of the team. Overall team average, 87.58. The numbers speak for themselves. Boys varsity track, girls varsity bowling, varsity cheer, girls varsity track, boys varsity wrestling, boys varsity bowling, and girls varsity basketball. This is remarkable. In all, 112 winter athletes had a 90 or above GPA, and 31 of them had a 100 or above GPA. So huge accomplishment for our student athletes, for the coaches who inspire them, and of course for the teachers who support them. So really big shout out. And on top of that, Bellport High School ranked 3rd with the 3rd most winter scholars in Suffolk County. So it's a great accomplishment for our school district. And yes, Williams today we're tied for 3rd with Ward Belleville High School and Comac High School. But still, exactly right, thank you. So great accomplishment, but here we have some guests in the audience because we had a pretty remarkable winter sports season. So I want to begin by giving a shout out to our winter track team, which was coached by Dan Jennings and Matt Grossi. And I want to call up Ella Mason. Come on, man. And I made a confession. I didn't realize Ella had a twin. So I don't know if I've called your sister Ella, so I apologize. All right, that's what I figured. Congratulations. Ella has been impressing us for the last few years. She's all county, all state, and all federations for 1,000 years. Also, I want to call Nevaeh Pedraza. All right. She's all county for 55 years, all county, all state, and all federations for the long job. Which I have no idea how you do that, but impressive. And for our sprint medley relay, I want to call Ava Cooley, Inocencio Rodriguez, Nevaeh Pedraza is here, and Ella Mason. They are the first team of the 17 teams, and congratulations to them, the coaches, and to the entire track team. You guys can stay up here, we got more. Next, I want to make a big shout out to our sort of trend-setting, revolutionary girls wrestling team who are state champions. So big shout out to Coach Shirley. I want to call up Aliyah Morrow. She was an all-state and a state finalist. Congratulations. Kaylin Carjolio, come on down. She was all-state. And Charlie Howard, who's all-county for wrestling. Congratulations. And there you go. Good luck, you guys again. And I don't want to take anything away from our boys team, but you guys wrestle hard. So it was amazing to behold when we witnessed it. So thank you to the coaches. This picture here was like at the beginnings of the process. And who would have known what it would have led to? So congratulations to you all. Very well deserved. Moving on to our boys wrestling team, which are coached by Charles Frangiolio. So I get so tongue twisted when I say the name. It's a beautiful Italian name. And Robert Cuffey. They also had assistance from Jamie Fabian and Kevin Maloney. But I want to call up Henry Caceres, received All-County. Congratulations. Jacob Snedeker, All-County. Hayden Sugar, also All-County. And last but not least, county, state, and managerial champion at a record time, hitting someone in 11 seconds. How's that even possible? Kevin Howard. He's at wrestling. Figures. So, congratulations to you all. We'd love to get a photo of you guys together. Oh, and the coaches too, my bad. We have certificates for the coaches too, so please, Mr. Mardiello, Mr. Cuffey, Mr. Jennings, Mr. Scioli, and Mr. Grassi. My bad. Our athletes, you go in front of the dais. You want to go in front of the dais, Mr. Jackson?
Actually, one block you guys.
Yeah, you gotta pop through right there. Right there.
I'm just going to ask the student athletes to stick around for a little bit, because I know the trustees may want to make some comments in recognition of your achievements. Moving on. Seems like I lost my clicker. And I didn't want to leave our wonderful athletic trainer out, but Miss Gina Harris, who wasn't invited because I learned about this late in the afternoon, was recognized as the National Athletic Trainer of the Year. I know she's always on the sidelines, looking out for you guys. So congratulations to Gina Harris. We'll make sure we acknowledge her. Finally, please follow us on social media. We have various social media handles highlighting the many, many great things that are happening in our school district. If you want our website on the homepage, again, I want to say this over and over. Our website will be updated. We'll be launching our new website July 1st. But you can stay in touch by subscribing to the community portal. All of our social media links and handles are here at this link, as well as the Superintendent's Corner, which is updated on a monthly basis. My contact information, my social media feed, and my weekly update or blog is also published on our website. So thank you all for everything you do for the country. That concludes my superintendent's report.
Just wanted to again commend all these students, and it was incredibly uplifting to see two things leap out at me from that presentation. And one was the GPA for the students and the teams, and it demonstrates that our students are not just athletes, but they also concentrate on their academics as hard as they go on the sports field or in the particular event. And the other thing is it's a delight to sit up here and look at the expanded opportunities for female athletes, because it feels to me like it wasn't that long ago that the opportunities weren't there. And I'm so proud of our district and the participants to see where we've come.
Thank you. And the Howard family just walked out, and I was going to compliment them to say I graduated high school with their grandmother. So, but that didn't give away my age, did it? But the first wrestling tournament I went to, I was just so overwhelmed with the coaches and how much love they gave to their students in encouragement for those matches. I grew up as a sports kid. I was one of those young girls who couldn't play baseball as a kid, and my mother walked me into the village hall to sign me up for Little League, and I was told the little girls couldn't play baseball, even though I could have competed very well with the boys. And so I started my own league when I was 18 years old for little girls, Patchogue Youth Athletic Association. I started that league so the little girls could have a place to play when they were denied opportunities. So I know what it takes to be a coach and what it takes to start leagues from the ground up, and I know what you guys must have had to do to start that league, and I felt it the moment I walked in the gym that day. So I want to say hats off to you, to everything you gave those students to get where they are today. Job well done.
I just want to say congratulations to all the athletes. The fact that our scholars again are so prevalent, I think that's terrific. I appreciate the time having two girls who are scholar athletes, the balance that takes, and then working with teachers and coaches. Just give a shout out, you guys work really hard. Congratulations.
I'd like to offer my congratulations to all of the athletes. We're all very proud of your achievements, and I'd like to echo Ms. Felice's memory of trying to sign up for Little League and not being allowed because I was a girl. So very proud of the young girls in our school making these great strides in athletics. And I just want to touch briefly, I don't know, but I'll touch briefly on the committee meeting, the health and safety committee meeting that I attended a few weeks ago. And just a shout out to the custodial staff and Mr. Piero. I have a laundry list of notes that I took of work that they're doing throughout all of the various buildings in the district. And I just remembered that when I was taking notes about the middle school and the work that was done on the lockers, I noted that OMG, because I was really amazed by the beautiful work that Mr. Piero and his custodial staff are doing. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Just briefly, want to comment on obviously the athletes, but also how quickly time flies. So last night was the Evening of Excellence, and it was certainly impressive to see all those. Congratulations to the seniors for all that they've accomplished in their time at the Buckmore High School and beyond. And it was fantastic to see those teachers recognized who really made an impact and were above and beyond nominated for recognition at last night's event. Congratulations to the winter athletes, and thank you.
A couple of quick things as well. First, the superintendent and I had a meeting with Sub-County Legislator Dominic Thorne a few weeks ago. I mentioned that earlier. So we appreciate Mr. Thorne reaching out to us. He really just wanted to strengthen communication between the district and his office. He's also part of an agricultural committee through the county and offered up some programs for elementary school students and some grants and things like that. So we appreciate the communication and discussion with Legislator Thorne. I also had the opportunity with the Nassau Suffolk School Board to attend an LAA event, which was featured EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. It was an education center. We were invited. It was fascinating, I thought, regardless of your politics, to listen to a sitting cabinet member and some of the inner workings of government. But again, it wasn't much other than some discussion about electric school buses, which we've talked about quite a bit here. In addition to that I did want to really just applaud those athletes that we recognize tonight. There's such a great correlation between athletics and performance in the classroom. I did a lot of reading on this many years ago about it, and I spent my career in the sporting goods industry, and it's fascinating to see how the athlete's mind works and how athletics really lends itself, as well as other things such as music, etc. But the statistics on athletes, there's a book called Spark that talks about the athlete's performance on entrance exams into colleges and things like that, and how they score. And I found it fascinating. So congratulations to keep that type of schedule up and maintain those grades in the classroom. It's extraordinary. And then for those individuals, awards and accomplishments in athletics, I mean, being from a sports family, somebody who plays sports, interested sports, it's remarkable. Some of those things, the young ladies in track. I mean, I'm a track guy, obviously I can't run very fast, but watching some of these times and some of your performance and the accolades is extraordinary. When I was young, the coach tried to get me to wrestle, but I wouldn't wear a singlet, so wrestling's a little foreign to me. But I watched a lot this year, and we talked about it a lot, and it's such an incredible experience to watch, specifically the girls team, how it came together, and just the increase in performance over the last few years in our boys program. So it really is a bright spot. When I leave the district and I'm involved in our schools, everybody wants to ask about our wrestling program. A lot of people want to ask about Cam Howard, and his accolades are well known throughout Long Island and probably the country by now. But it really is remarkable. And hats off to the coaches, and I think they just do an amazing job. Mr. Shioli and I had a great conversation a couple of weeks ago running into each other in town, and it just makes me feel good what goes into it, especially something that's new. And to echo Ms. Felice's comments about opportunities for girls in athletics, it really is remarkable. And you never really want to have some time. You want to, research the academic performance, but as well as the benefits that young girls have in their adult life from playing sports, as far as being victimized and things like that. They're extraordinary. So it's just such a wonderful thing to see and perform at that level. It's just great. So congratulations to everybody. Thank you. Okay, so now we have public commentary for agenda items. Public commentary will, occur 2 times during the meeting. One, the first time, which is now for agenda items. Second, for non-agenda items later in the agenda. Comments for each speaker are limited to 3 minutes. Total time for public session is 30 minutes. Comments related to a personnel matter or individual students will not be entertained in public. Public commentary is a time for the board to hear comments from the public, not a question and answer period between the board and the public. If asked informational questions requiring short answers, will be addressed. However, the board will not enter into dialogue with the speaker during public commentary. District residents who seek additional information will be guided to an administrator who will address their questions. For more, you can see our pamphlet for guidance to the board meetings. In regards to the time, in regards to the time, 3 minutes. If you're speaking and the buzzer goes off, please finish your sentence, finish your thought, don't start a new thought. I hate having to interrupt you until your time is up, but there's a handful of cards here, and I want to give everybody ample time to speak and trustees to hear what everybody has to say. With that, before I call the first speaker up there, if there are any students who want to take this moment to sneak out of the room, you're welcome to do so now. Go ahead, you come on out, get out of here, you don't want to be here. It's okay, this is the time. And when your name is called, just come over here. The district clerk will see you with the microphone, right? Great.
So, point of information, Cam Howard is actually practicing, he's participating in the U.S. Open this weekend. So it's wish him luck, and I'm sure it's a clip of pride how he competes in the U.S. Open. Pretty fantastic.
Okay. Our first speaker is Pat Brady.
My name is Patrick Brady, President of the Bellport Teachers Association and Special Education teacher for 23 years at Bellport High School. Prior to spring break, myself, Mr. Huntsman, building principals, had 43 meetings with my members, informing them that they may be accessed. Today I had my 44th. With a library media specialist to inform her that she now may be accessed. Along with the library media specialist I spoke to today, we have 2 other positions in that may not be filled for library media specialists. That's going to vacate or rid K-3 of library media specialists. Our library media specialists go beyond handing out books and doing decimal systems. I go around the district. I've flown drones in their classrooms. I've got 3 books. At the high school level, our library media specialist does virtual field trips. Just took my kids around Rome the other week. In the special ed world where I teach, we no longer have co-taught forensics, co-taught chemistry. Our connection classes are no longer co-taught. Again, programmatic cuts to our district. If you read the Long Island events past week, I was interviewed. And my main point in that was we're here to support our students. Cutting the front lines of us is not supporting our students. When the district puts out a posting for a job position, I ask 2 questions. 1, is it necessary? And 2, is it sustainable? Overwhelmingly, I'm told yes. What I'm asking is that you find a way to keep these jobs sustainable. We should not be the first place that cuts away, and I feel that we are. You're going to hear from some of my colleagues today expressing the same frustration that I've had. Please, I beg of you, for our students, the culture of our district, to save any clip of pride that we may have, I beg of you, before you endorse a budget, make sure that the impact on our students and my colleagues is minimal. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Amanda Parry. I currently teach at Bellport High School, and I teach English there, and I have for the last 8 years. I wrote a little speech, sorry. Even though this isn't going to change much, I wanted to come up here to represent myself and the many other teachers who are in the unfortunate limbo of unemployment. For some of you, I might be a familiar face of a former student or colleague, but for our community, I have been a teacher in the district for what would be 8 years this September, not including the years that I spent substitute teaching and teaching summer school. The last time that I spoke in front of the board, I was reciting an article that I wrote for the Long Island Advance about my mother for Mother's Day. I had won a writing contest, and my 3rd grade teacher, Barbara Shatson, made it a point to make me feel worthy and validated for my work, as all of us great teachers do. South Country has been my life for as long as I can remember, and it has been a pleasure to impact the thousands of students I've been lucky enough to know. However, I am here speaking with a much different tone today. Given the current state of the educational culture, here and everywhere, it is extremely concerning to find that our English, reading, and literacy teachers are the ones being cut with the budgeting issues. We have always been an underpopulated department, and as the need for literacy increases, it simply does not make sense to cut areas of such need. For me and many others, it is a ground shaker. As mentioned earlier, most of my life has been invested in this community. My 2 young children have attended South Country celebrations since they were born, not yet walking, but wearing Bellport red and blue. Uprooting my life to seek employment elsewhere wasn't anything that I anticipated after 10 years into my teaching career, nor should it be. Why is it that the English department has the fewest hires when locally and federally our initiatives are focused on the science of reading, writing, and improving overall literacy? Quite frankly, it's baffling, and it is a loss for so many. For coworkers, they are losing positive peers who make them laugh and help to keep them motivated. They are losing core collaborators who have helped keep the passion for teaching burning bright. For students, they are losing trustworthy, safe adults who have helped to instill school spirit and Clipper pride into their high school experience. They are also losing essential pillars in their educational support system. For our overall community, we will suffer greatly. Morale will further decline as fingers continue to be pointed elsewhere for fault. Trust in the school system will continue to decrease and enrollment will continue to drop. It feels as though the decisions are being made for the areas of cuts are senseless and empty. And though we're being told otherwise, I do fear that these cuts will be detrimental to student success. I hope that standing here right now raises awareness that FTEs are not just letters and numbers. We are active members of this district who feel disheartened and betrayed. I just want to say thank you to my supportive department who's been there for all this craziness. And they've become my second family, so thank you all so much. Thank all of you for listening today, and thank you to South Country Schools for being a foundational part of my life.
Good evening. I've been a teaching assistant at Bellport High School for the last 15 years. But more importantly, I moved to Bellport 9 years ago because of my deep love for this community and this town. I've worked 20 years for the city of New York. And in that time, up until Mike Bloomberg became mayor, every year, hundreds of New York City cops would transfer and switch over to the fire department. But why? The money was the same, the benefits were the same, the danger was the same. In my mind, the reason why is that the FDNY operated as a family. Firefighters, lieutenants, captains, chiefs, they all operated as one. They worked as one, they ate meals as one, they enjoyed success as one, and they suffered hardships as one. The police department was different. The police department was more cops and bosses. And it was more us and them. And I feel that when something drifts into us and them, it's very hard to get back. And I see this community that I love at a crossroads right now, right here. And I see families in my neighborhood sometimes put the house up and move out. And enrollment is dropping. And I don't have any answers for why. But I do have answers that I work every day with some of our reading teachers and librarians, English teachers, and I see every day with my own eyes the connection they make with our students that you can't get with money. And to lose that, it would take forever to try and get back. So I would ask if it was at all possible, if you were able to go back one more time and rework the numbers so we all felt these cuts as one family to try and move forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
Frederica Council.
Can you hear me? Is this better?
Yeah,
Closer?
well,
All right. Good evening. My name is Frederica Council, and I am an E&L teacher at Brookhaven Elementary School. I initially planned to be a behind-the-scenes advocate, but as a true New Yorker, my heart reminded me that if you see something, say something. So I stand before you deeply concerned about the decision to potentially access more than 40 positions. On April 17, 2023, alongside a small group of my colleagues and cherished administrators, I met with Mr. Santana and Ms. Doyle, advocating for the dual language coordinator position, a role I still believe remains crucial to strengthening our dual language and E&L programs. At that time, Mr. Santana, your enthusiastic commitment to sustaining the position was so admirable, inspiring even. Yet 2 short years later, I find myself advocating for the roles currently fulfilled by 40-plus outstanding educators whose absence would create an immeasurable void in our Clipper community. You know, I actually believe the dual language coordinator position would grow as robustly as that of a literacy coordinator, where we would have multiple across the district. I even allowed myself to dream that we would one day have multiple restorative practices coordinators who can further support the work being done to foster a supportive and inclusive environment for all members in the district. But I guess we're suddenly okay with just scratching the surface. E&L and special education teachers who were initially declared safe are now facing outright dismissals or the looming threat of a pink slip. What is the plan to ensure we don't go through this again? Keep in mind, concepts of a plan is not a plan. We would not have been so blindsided by a $3 million deficit if we had a foundation of ethical transparency and accepted that hope is not a strategy. How can educators, the wheels of education, confidently move our district forward if our tires are being slashed and simultaneously filled with hot air? You're supposed to keep our tanks filled with the best fuel so we don't burn out, along with each board meeting seems to reveal an even larger roster of potential cuts. How can you say programs will not be impacted, but meet with almost 50 people who may not return to the district? The proposed discontinuation of positions, letting go of educators and teaching assistants, and reshuffling remaining staff to satisfy the bare minimum requirements is a disservice to our students and completely undermines our district's identity that claims to be rooted in pride. Who is truly accountable if our voices remain unheard? It's time to put the camera down and pick up a mirror. Is this the decision a true reflection? Is this decision a true reflection of your Clipper pride? I'd imagine it to be the implementation of strategic and meaningful changes that value every student, educator, and opportunity we have to enhance our district, not getting rid of more than 40 educators. There are alternative paths, from more intentional transportation planning, I'm almost finished, and improving current curriculum to reimagining central office pay structure. In the past, our bargaining unit has endured pay freezes out of a devotion to our students. So I ask not if, but when will central office share that sacrifice? I'll be sending all of you an email.
Thank you. Terry Tony.
My name is Carrie Kearney, and I am one of the kindergarten dual language teachers at Brookhaven Elementary School. And I am speaking not only as a concerned educator, but as someone who has invested deeply, both professionally and personally, in the success of our schools, our students, and our district. It is no secret that out of 124 districts, we are ranked 123rd in math and 124th in literacy. This is not just a number. This is a wake-up call. But more than that, it is an opportunity. An opportunity for us to make meaningful adjustments, to reflect, and to reimagine how we serve our students and our community. It is a chance to ask ourselves tough but necessary questions. Are we doing everything we can to support student success? Are we investing in the right places? And are we listening to the people closest to the work? And in the face of this critical moment, we hear the plans of accessing teachers. Dedicated professionals who show up every single day despite enormous challenges, limited resources, and a growing list of responsibilities that extend far beyond the classroom. We've invested our time, energy, and personal resources because our students deserve the best. Whether it's adapting to programs on short notice, translating lessons to meet diverse needs, or buying classroom supplies ourselves, every decision we make as educators is rooted in what's best for our students. We have accepted pay and lien freezes and even allowed the district to borrow money from us, not for credit, but because our students rely on us every single day. We would like to better understand what financial steps central office has taken to support the district as a whole. Are there any sacrifices or adjustments being made at that level to help ensure that those on the front lines, our educators and staff, are supported, protected, and empowered to continue doing their important work, which ultimately comes down to what is best for our students? Cutting teachers is not a solution. It's a short-term move that will have long-term negative consequences. Larger class sizes, lower morale, reduced support for students who are in need of actual more support. These outcomes do not move us up from 124 or 123. They hold us down. Additionally, taking away the singular dual language coordinator position would be a disservice to students, staff, and this community. Dual language students are among the top performing students within our district because of the strategic support we currently provide. This program is not only academically successful, but it also is ahead of the curve academically and culturally, fostering an inclusive and forward-thinking environment. Our approach demonstrates innovative and adaptability, thinking outside of the box to effectively teach two large groups of students within a limited time frame. Why dissolve this position? Clearly, our dual language coordinator and program should be looked at more as an example to follow, not as a target for cuts. Why are we taking away from a program that has succeeded? Shouldn't we be investing more into it? If we want a real change, we need real investment in the people who are directly impacting student lives every single day. It too often feels like these decisions and these cuts and excesses are being made based on lines and numbers on a spreadsheet rather than an understanding of the inner workings of a school and the direct impact it will have on our students. This is our moment not just to react, but to rebuild. Not just to cut, but to correct. Let's not waste this opportunity. Rethinking accessing teachers and dissolving important position that makes significant positive changes to our district is a disservice. And let's work together to move from last place, not by cutting corners, but by lifting up the very people who make education.
Ms. Carney, thank you.
Okay, moving on to items F, budget presentation.
All right, good evening. So first I want to acknowledge that everything that was sort of expressed by Ms. Kearney, Ms. Council, Mr. Alt, Ms. Mary, Mr. Brady, I can't disagree with. The notion that teachers are not valued is a false notion. Sometimes we have to make in leadership positions really difficult decisions because we're tasked with a lot more than supporting teachers or a lot more than promoting our programs. We also have to respond to the financial realities that we're facing. I, for one, having spent a third of my career as a classroom teacher, appreciate the value teachers have for our students, for our community, to be honest, for our country as a whole. When I was enthusiastic, for example, about our little language coordinator, it was genuine. 2 years ago, we didn't see or have the foresight, not because of lack of planning, that we'd be in this situation this year. The point of today's budget presentation is to sort of articulate the budget process, how we came to make these decisions. I want to emphasize that there is a lot of misinformation out there. The decision to reduce staff is not because we want to provide minimal standards for our students or minimal program supports to meet state mandates. It's because we have no choice. And hopefully I'll be able to convey that to you. None of this work is easy for myself, for the trustees, for administrative staff, certainly not for the BTA, the BTAA, the SCAA, or the CSEA, and the SCGA, which is a guard association, who all have to sort of share in sort of what's happening. I can't emphasize enough how difficult this is because I do value teachers. Many of the teachers that we've hired in the last few years I've met with individually, I've visited their classrooms, and they do fantastic work. There's no doubt. This is heartbreaking, and it's not easy. So I want to begin by going through this process, and the point of tonight is to kind of give a summary of the whole budget process, how we came to these conclusions, and to hopefully give a better understanding of where we landed. Tonight, we have to adopt a budget. We'll have a budget hearing on May 7th and a budget vote and election on May 20th. But I get right to it. I want to give some context to our budget process. First and foremost, not just once, twice, we visited our budget line by line multiple times. We looked at any areas, whether it's supplies, software, where we can make cuts to expenditures. That was our first approach. What did we feel was sort of, extra that we didn't need from these budget lines? I can assure you this process was done by myself, my cabinet, administrators, department chairs, to ensure we looked at every possible budget line to see where we can make reductions to address our financial situation. Above and beyond that, we looked at our services and contracts. We looked at what services we could perhaps eliminate, consulting services, etc., what contracts we could perhaps reduce and renegotiate to again reduce costs. And finally, as a last resort, we look at staffing. Staffing happens to be the largest component of our spending in a school district budget. So it's almost impossible not to look at it. And when we say we wanted to do so in a fashion that has minimal impact on programs, we meant it. And as you'll see, a lot of the cuts that we're proposing spread across departments because we don't want to target one department or one program. The idea is to maintain all of our programs moving forward. And all of this was not done in a vacuum. This was done by virtue of working with consultants or professionals in their fields, other educators in other districts who are going through similar challenges, input from stakeholders, including our administration, our trustees, our teachers, community members. We've got a lot of feedback that we've appreciated, that we've considered. But ultimately, one of the most difficult things for us to appreciate and understand that our current financial situation is real. Throughout my career as an administrator, I've been in this business for 27 years, almost 20 of which was been as an administrator. I've heard about budget woes. And somehow miraculously, these budget woes never seem to manifest. It certainly manifested in 2012 when I worked at Three Village, and we had to access almost 20 teachers from one building, which is really large at that point. It happened again years later. This was because of the gap adjustment or the tax cap that happened. In fact, one of our employees here was accessed from my building back then. So this has happened in the past, but it's almost rare that the situation is as dire as it is now. The rising cost of operating the school district is outpacing the increases or any increases we have in revenue. Our revenue structure is very strict and rigid. We're not a for-profit business. We're not a private school where we can raise tuition to meet these operating costs. And we're not a private business where we can raise prices to meet these operating costs. So let me take you through the budget process from beginning to end so that hopefully you get an understanding of how we got here. Not that it's going to make you feel better. There's nothing I can say that's going to make anyone who's in danger of losing their position feel better at this point. As much as I can offer my assistance moving forward in terms of helping you land a position, be using me as a reference, I'll do anything possible to help out, but nothing I'm going to say tonight is to make those people feel better, or your colleagues for that matter. And I feel really badly about that, but that's not about me. So let's get to the process. On January 2nd, we had our first budget presentation. We talked about the challenges that we're facing. Some of these challenges are very familiar to us. First, it's the inflation and the tax cut calculation. What I mean by that is inflation has been astronomical. We all know it. We all joke about the price of eggs. Costs have just simply been going up year after year. What has not been going up is our ability to raise tax cap, the ability to generate revenue. So imagine that inflation being super high, our ability to generate revenue staying static. Sacrifices need to be made. For the past 3 years, we had the benefits of having these federal grants. In the total of $12 million. $2 million one year, $6 million one year, and $4 million one year. Those grants were used to offset expenditures, which provided a cushion. We also have the differential in building state aid, but it's building aid, and our bond payments. This is the financial cliff that we're talking about that we're in the second year of. These things were anticipated, and we planned for it by doing different things, by using our reserves differently, by making cuts to expenditures in other areas. But this is what we anticipated. Decreases in foundation aid was not anticipated 2 years ago when we instituted some of these positions. What I mean by decreases in foundation aid is last year, our foundation aid was flat. We got the same aid last year that we got the previous year. Or rather this year, the last year's budget for this year, our foundation aid was flat. Which is basically like a decrease, because our operating costs are always going to go up. There are salary increments, cost of operating goes up. So it's essentially like a flat sort of, or even a decrease if you look at it from that perspective. This year, in the governor's initial proposal, and this is something that we're lobbying for because it's almost criminal that we don't have a proposal yet at this date because our foundation aid may change. And that may change when we stand with our staffing, which I'll talk about later. But we got allocated 2% in foundation aid. It's about $800,000. Even with that increase, because of our building aid dropping, we are suffering a net loss of $1.2 million in state aid for the upcoming school year, coupled with rising expenses. We've also had significant increases in healthcare, transportation, and special education costs. More and more students who are registering in our district, despite our declining enrollment, require special education sources that come with a cost. And I hate saying that because I don't want to demonize these children who are really, they deserve our services. So please don't mistake what I'm saying. They just come associated with costs. This year alone, we had new entrants, 11, who have outside placements that are very costly to a school district. So again, it's not about demonizing these children. They deserve those services. We want to do the best to support them, but they come with costs. So how are we planning to mitigate these sort of challenges at this point in our budget process? Well, obviously we're looking at our programs. And what I mean by that is supplies, instructional supplies, programs, software, where we can see where we can reduce expenditures. We're looking at ongoing exploration of alternative revenue sources. We've even contemplating tuitioning kids in more special ed, because that generates revenue for the school districts. Looking at some of the spaces, do we have extra classrooms that we lease out to BOCES, for example, to generate revenue? We looked at that. And we also looked at the use of our reserves. Can we use the reserves to a greater extent, or our assigned fund balance, which I'll explain in a bit, to a greater extent, because that can be used on the revenue side in the balanced budget. And finally, engage in capital improvement projects. The reason that benefits this whole process is because when you engage in capital improvement projects, you generate building aid. But 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, 16 years ago, the school district engaged in a bond at about $100 million, I believe the bond was, correct me if I'm wrong. So obviously you take out a loan, and you receive building aid at the rate of almost 75%, and that building aid is spread out over 15 years. The school district, which is a very common practice, took out a bond for 20 years, which meant that there's going to be a 5-year differential between making bond payments that amount somewhere in the area of about $6 million a year. So during those years, we're going to have that differential because that state aid is dropping, but we'd have these bond payments. Typically, school districts will take out another bond to continue the work, so you always have that influx of building aid coming in. And the truth is, anybody who owns a house knows you have to keep maintaining the house because the cost to make repairs starts becoming sort of unsustainable. Capital reserve work too, capital improvement work too, is budget neutral. Capital improvements come out of our capital reserve, which is already in our general fund, so it doesn't represent any cost to our taxpayers or any additional monies, and yet we receive state aid. So since I've been here, we have 2 capital reserve votes, one for $2.6 million, one for $2.2 million. We're finally breaking ground on all those projects this summer. We also engaged in an energy performance contract, which is budget neutral, at almost $9 million that will receive state aid on. The way that works is engineers studying our district. We're breaking ground this summer on this to increase efficiencies. And basically what happens is you're going to get state aid for that work, and you're going to have a reduction in your operating costs in terms of energy. And that sort of becomes budget neutral. We also added a capital transfer budget line. What that enables us to do is you embed a line in our budget that the voters vote on when they approve our tax levy that allows us to do an amount of money's worth of capital work each year. 2 years ago, we added a $1 million transfer capital line in our existing budget so that we can engage in $1 million worth of work every year with the hopes that if you do that every year, you're going to start generating building aid for subsequent years. And each year that you do $1 million worth of work, that doesn't translate to a lot of money, because when you spread that over 15 years, it's about $100,000 a year. But in the second year of getting building aid, you get $200,000, $300,000, and so on and so forth. So that was a very deliberate plan, and/or have capital reserve votes. And we also have to consider future bond proposals, because the cost of maintaining our buildings is becoming sort of unsustainable as things keep falling apart. At this point, we thought about staffing reductions in terms of attrition. How many staff members are going to be retiring? How many staff members maybe we're separating from? And whether or not that would be enough to sort of reduce that expenditure in a manner that we can sustain and propose a balanced budget. That was our first presentation. Our second presentation, I'm going to rush through, but it was basically about the tax levy. The tax levy is the amount of money we get from our taxpayers to help fund the school district. For South Country, that only represents 46% of our budget, or our revenue, I should say. 54% comes from state aid and miscellaneous revenue. The tax levy limit is based on an 8-point formula that's mandated by the state. There's no wiggle room. That basically tells you how much you can ask for in terms of a tax levy that would require a simple majority vote to get approved. And anything beyond the tax levy limit, or what we like to call a tax cap, requires a supermajority vote. So we proposed 2 scenarios at this time. Scenario A, which had a 3.48 tax levy limit, did not include a transfer capital line. And the reason we provided that to the trustees at this time is because we knew we had some financial challenges. Scenario B included a transfer to capital line of $1 million, which raised the tax levy limit to 4.9%, or $71 million, or $71.5 million, to $72 million, obviously to $1 million increase. The only caveat to that is that extra $1 million cannot be used to offset expenditures or to pay for salaries. It can only be used for capital improvement projects. So when we looked at our revenue sources, we saw again that we had a little over $1.2 million decrease in our revenue from the state. This meant we would be having to look, I'm sorry we can't read it, that's just a list of our reserves, and assigned fund balance. Assigned fund balance is basically the balance of monies left over for 1 year that can be assigned for use in the subsequent year. So we knew we would have to look at this and see if we increase the use of reserves for a couple of years to sort of close that gap, maybe provide more assigned fund balance to help close the gap. But knowing that our expenditures were going up and that we would not be able to use a transfer capital line to offset expenditures, we strongly recommended to the trustees that we go with scenario A, because we knew in all likelihood we're probably going to be going up right up to the tax levy limit in our proposal. And if we're going to propose a tax levy limit of 4.9% in this current climate, we have to be mindful of taxpayers. We thought, in our opinion, it wouldn't be the right thing to do if that increase would not help save jobs in our district. So the tax levy limit at 3.48% or 4.9% allowed us the same revenue to be used for expenditures. There was no difference except for the $1 million that we could have used to make improvements to our buildings. That was the second presentation. Our third presentation, we talked about 3 budget lines, the 1,000 code, that's administrative cost, everything it costs to administer the school district, transportation, and unallocated. Unallocated is basically government obligations, debt services, employee entitlements. And at this point in our budget process, we're already alarmed that at these 3 categories, the 5,000 code, which is transportation, the most alarming, there were significant increases. At this point in these 3 categories, out of the 4 categories we have, we were showing a 7% budget-to-budget increase, which, considering inflation, considering the way the economy is going, doesn't seem that remarkable. But when you consider that our revenue structure is so rigid and we can't really increase our revenue that much, it was a cause of alarm for our team. So then we went on to the curriculum code, which is 2000. The 2000 code is our largest budgetary code. It represents all of the curriculum instruction, salaries, general education classrooms, special education classrooms, and all extracurricular activities. At this point, in this presentation on March 5th, we're looking at a 3% increase. And if you look, the 2000 code currently is about $73 million. That's basically half the budget alone comes from that code. But altogether, budget to budget, it was a 5% increase, which again was remarkable for us because of our rigid revenue structure. So we knew the next step in our next presentation just happens to be staffing. So what can we do in terms of staffing with minimal impact to programs so we can reduce it, perhaps with attrition, maybe more, in a manner that's going to help reduce that budget increase. What we considered when we came to staffing, I shared this before, is we want to continue to meet the academic and social emotional needs of our students. That goes without saying, and that continues. We also wanted to make sure that we are in compliance with special education mandates, E&L mandates, and SED mandates. In South Country, we offer more than what's mandated, and even with our proposal today, we're still going to be able to provide more than what's mandated. Maintain academic and extracurricular activities to the greatest extent possible. I can say with confidence that we're not cutting our programs. Still have a dual language program. We're still going to have our restorative practices program. We're still going to have all of our extracurricular activities. We just have to sort of rethink in some areas how we support it, how we deliver it, but we're not looking to cut any programs. And we also have to respond in a responsive manner to our declining enrollment. We've lost 600 students in the last 10 years. From last year to this, we lost 111 students. We continue to have transient students. We're registering students. I feel like we register students almost every week, but we also are losing students. And of those students who are registering, disproportionately, they're English language learners and special education students, which are all wonderful kids that we're going to support, but they also represent additional costs. So, given those rises in expenditures, we have to look at making staffing reductions that align with our our declining enrollment. And our plan, which is not a hope, it was a plan to sort of reduce staff, to sort of right the ship, long-term through attrition, through retirements, through separations, was sort of upended because there was urgency. And we had to sort of make tough decisions now. So on March 19th, during our 5th budget presentation, we wanted to preserve small class sizes as much as possible. We looked at our available revenues and gradually adjust given the declining enrollment. So during this time, we proposed a reduction of 1 administrator and 2 teachers on special assignment, which we referred to before. We proposed a reduction of 7.2 elementary school teachers Again, our average class sizes with these reductions are relatively small when you compare it to Long Island. School districts don't reduce staff unless they need to, because if we can maintain small class sizes, even if they're disproportionately small, why not do it if it's sustainable? Why not do it if you have the revenue to support it? Again, we're not a private business. And at the secondary level, this is across middle school and secondary school, we propose a 15.5 FTE. And again, this is not people, this is FTEs reduction across departments. So when you see that there's reductions in E&L, special ed, art, it doesn't mean we're losing people. It's just we try to spread the reductions out as much as possible so that not one just area is impacted disproportionately to another area. Again, I know this is hard. Existing programs are still going to exist. The way we support students may look different, but we're not eliminating programs in our school districts. Even when we refer to the library program, we're not done with the staffing process, even with the adoption or the potential adoption of a budget, which I'll get to in the end, what it means for us moving after that. But as we said on this point, we knew that we needed to continually look at our staffing, and so we're going to look at the non-instructional staff next, and continue to look at expenditures. The idea at this point was, can we save some of these jobs, the 25 jobs, in any manner? Again, just to review, we knew we were going to have a deficit over 3 years. We had a deficit this current year that we mitigated by making sort of budgetary reductions, not cut the program, budgetary reductions that took effect this year. This school year, we're expecting a deficit of about $1.3 million. This was all expected. And again, this year, we had a reduction of state aid of $1.2 million. We planned for this. What we didn't plan for, and what's new, again, are in just these 4 areas, these astronomical increases that are year to year. There's no gradual increases in these areas. We're looking at over a $5 million increase that doesn't include increases like salary increments, salary adjustments, and all those things that go up, or the costs associated with operating school districts. So this is what was new. This is what was alarming to us. And after that staffing presentation, our next presentation was to go over our revenue and expenditures and provide an update. So at this point, we looked at our revenue. Again, we saw that we had a reduction in state aid of about $1.2 million. We needed to look at the appropriate fund balance. We had proposed initially a reduction in that, because what that means for us is that you may have more funds available for contingencies, because things do happen. When a sewer line breaks, and that's an astronomical cost to maintain, you want to make sure that there's cushion in your budget so you can address these things. You don't want to propose a budget that's extremely tight. It just doesn't serve the school district well. So we knew we would have to look at our reserves and our appropriate fund balance at this point already. When we looked at the expenditures, this change, if you recall, was about 5% in the last presentation. We reduced it to about 4%. This is inclusive of the staff reductions that were already produced. But what I want to emphasize is that we still had a $3 million budgetary gap, even with the 25.5 FTE reductions in the BTA. We still had a $3 million budgetary gap because of the unprecedented increases in these expenditures. So what that meant was we had to again go back to the drawing board, look at expenditures in every budget line, 1,000, the 5,000s, and the 9,000s, and as well as potential staff reductions. The reason we met with 40 plus people was because we have a legal obligation to inform staff of the potential of accessing the staffing cuts. So we wanted to cast the net widely to make sure we were legally covered. Not to upset people, not to create fear or any sort of ambiguity in your future, but basically we were required to do so. So we had to go back to the drawing board when it came to staffing. We renegotiated contracts with our transportation. We were able to reduce it by half. The contract alone, the 16% increase in transportation, twofold. First is the contractual increase, which is 9%. The rest of the increase was the increased need of small buses. Each small bus we use to transport special education students costs the district about a little over $100,000 a year. So we had a sort of unprecedented increase in use of these buses. And we did look at routes. We worked with a consultant to look at all aspects of transportation to make sure we were as efficient as possible. And that process will continue. Because again, the goal is to continue reducing expenditures. The problem is maintaining a 10-to-1 teacher-to-student ratio is just not sustainable. How do we arrive at this ratio? You divide the total number of classroom teachers, not PTA members, by our enrollment. And currently, just to give you a sort of sense of where we're at, I'll just refer to my notes, we currently have 379 classroom teachers. This is not to mention support staff, counselors, speech pathologists, psychologists, social workers. And our current enrollment is 3,759. So you divide 3,759 by the amount of classroom teachers to give you that ratio. It's a pretty low ratio when you compare it to the average of New York State, which is about 12%. Or I'm sorry, 12-to-1, which doesn't seem that remarkable, but it is when you look at the totality of the teachers affected. So we have to revisit our sort of staffing proposals, and this increased. Increased because we had additional retirements. We also had some reassignments. But when you look at elementary staff, it went up to 13.6 FTEs. Secondary staff, 18.6. So a total of 35.2 FTEs reduction. And again, this doesn't represent bodies, it represents FTEs. Secondly, we looked at the non-instructional staff, which includes 16 reductions across all of our collective bargaining units. To break it down, that represents 12 TAs, 3 of which are retiring, 9 of which are potentially accessed, 3 safety officers, and 1 custodial who's retiring. Again, all really difficult decisions to make. If and when the budget is adopted, we have to revisit this because we're going to work backwards. This is where we collaborate with our administrators, collective bargaining units, to see how we can deliver this in a manner that's not going to affect or minimally affect our programs and the manner in which we support students. So the process continues. It's not just as easy as saying we adopt a budget, this is positions. We continue with the process. We're also going to continue exploring revenue sources, other expenditures we can cut, because again, what we budget for in terms of staffing, it's not, and I don't want to give false hope, but it's somewhat fluid if things or situations change. If by some miracle, the government puts out a proposal that gives us a 5% increase in foundation aid, that may change things. We don't have a proposal yet, so we can't answer that question. And again, I want to say existing programs, our goal is to maintain them. We're going to be running all the programs we run. Again, the way we deliver it may look different, but we're going to be maintaining our programs. Even if we went with this full reduction, even if we reduced everybody, our student-to-teacher ratio will be 11-to-1, which is still low. With this reduction, we would go down to 352 classroom teachers, and again, with our current enrollment, that would be the ratio across the district. And again, I want to emphasize, school districts don't reduce staff unless it's absolutely necessary. So I want to go back to my initial points. We've worked many hours looking at our expenditures, looking at budget reductions. All of us, Sagi, Sohagan, Mr. Huntsman, administrators, we've spoken to teachers, we've got input from teachers and community members. We looked at what services and consultants we could maybe not use next year and make cuts in those areas. And we also looked at staffing. And we're going to continue looking at staffing and make our final determinations, which will happen in the next few weeks. I want to emphasize again, financial challenges we're facing are real. We cannot sustain the financial stability of the school district without making these hard decisions. I was appointed by the Board of Trustees to provide that leadership to make these tough decisions. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. I visualize the teachers that may be affected. I say it over and over again. None of this has to do with how we feel, and I'm sure I can speak about the trustees, about the value teachers have. I highlighted it in my superintendent's report. I highlighted it in all my superintendent's report. I owe my life to public education. And you all know what that means. I owe my life to the teachers who helped inspire me and take a kid out of poverty who's an English language learner and achieve success, at least in this profession. So, when we looked at our balanced budget proposal, our final balanced proposal, just to review, we're proposing a tax levy of $71 million, or $71.5 million. We're using our appropriated fund balance to a larger extent, and all of our reserves to a larger extent, which is sustainable for the coming future. So our final proposed tax levy limit for the proposed budget will be 3.48%. When we look at our budget-to-budget increase year to year, we landed at about an increase of about 3% or 3.87%. And finally, the final proposed tax levy is going to be at the cap at 3.8%. So the question was raised, number one, I think I answered, why not go with scenario B, which was a 4.9%? Because those monies allocated for capital reserves cannot be used to offset expenditures. It can only be used for capital reserve work. The idea of piercing the cap, each percentage point represents about $1 million or about 1.5. In order to preserve the jobs we're proposing we're cutting, we would have to propose a tax levy close to 10%. We also have to be mindful of our taxpayers, because again, only 46% of our revenue comes from the taxpayers. And that would just sort of punt this financial crisis into the next year. Please don't interrupt me, Mr. Condor.
You're not going to interrupt the presentation. You know the rules. You've been to meetings before. You know when you want to speak, you fill out a card.
So I'm going to say this.
Right? It is. Yes, it is.
Please let us finish the presentation. We're not lying, Dr. Otakon. With all respect, I'm not going to go back and forth, but ask for your respect just like I give it to you.
Mr. Otakon, conduct yourself appropriately. You're going to be asked to leave. It's that simple. Excuse me?
The only option is that.
No, excuse me. Sir, we're not taking comments from the audience. We have an opportunity for public commentary.
So let me conclude. So basically, I'm going to say it again. Piercing the tax cap is just going to propel the crisis because of declining enrollment, which is tied to foundation aid, another year. At a certain point, we have to sort of have staffing that we can sustain moving forward, because part of my responsibility is the financial stability of the school district. So our balanced budget proposal is, again, a budget increase of about 3%, a tax levy increase of 3.8%. Above and beyond this, on May 20th, we have a proposal, of course, to approve the tax levy, and a second proposal for a capital reserve vote. And again, these funds cannot be used to offset expenditures. They're designated for a specific purpose to address our track because it's unsafe. We want to be able to host events and have our students work on a track that's safe and accessible. The windows in our gymnasium continue to leak, damage the floor, which represents more additional costs. And not glamorous, but replacing 2 boilers at the high school that are pretty decrepit. The cost of maintaining those boilers is pretty astronomical. And what we're planning to do is not just remove the old boilers, but salvage their parts to use those parts to repair other boilers that may go down. All of this is very well thought out. And I want to say that this idea, some of the input I received, some of the disparaging comments, it doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't change our situation. When I hear comments like people are so upset that they're not going to vote on budget day, I want people to think about what that's going to accomplish. We need to support our teachers. We need to support our school district. These are really difficult times we're facing. None of this is easy. If we had an option, we would not be doing it.
Mr. Otakon, I don't know how many times I got to remind you. Conduct yourself appropriately. You're going to be asked to leave. It's that simple.
I appreciate that, Dr. Mr. Pacini, President Pacini. So that's it. Our budget hearing will be on May 7th. On May 20th, we vote. Again, I want to just validate how people are feeling, and hopefully you have an appreciation of the process and where we're at. Our financial situation is extremely real. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Questions from the board?
Trustees? States?
Let me just start my questions with a comment. Right. I took this job 7 years ago as a board member,
Maybe left the microphone.
Yeah, it's gotta be closer to your mouth. It's a little.
when I took, is that better? Okay. When I took this job 7 years ago as a board member, and I'm putting job in quotation marks, I have this intellectual understanding that my first obligation was to the children of this district, each and every one of them, but that I also had corresponding obligations to district employees and taxpayers. And sometimes the interests seem very difficult to balance. And that's where we are, it seems to be tonight. It demonstrates extraordinary challenges that are faced by this board and this administration, and the administration that's charged with operating the district. Because we're presented with a financial situation that's not in our control. The entire system of financing in the state of New York has contributed to this problem with the way they do the foundation aid, the various state aids, the fact that we can accumulate reserves equal to only 4% of a budget that would be available in times like this. And in times like today, that 4% just was not enough. So, I just want to have you perhaps repeat or maybe emphasize a couple of points that I think are really critical. Because I've heard from a number of people who share my concerns about the impact of this proposed budget on the delivery of programs and services to our students. And since I've been struggling with these for the past few weeks, I want to ask you to please go through each of them. So I've got a series of questions. And the first is, could you explain a little further about how the change in delivery of services can still provide the services that we've enjoyed in this district over the last few years and that have been uplifting to us?
Be like more specific in terms of which, so there's such a wide spectrum of services. So if we talk about special education services, how best can when we talk about electives, for example, losing the code to our classes that Mr. Brady brought up, how best can we support the classroom teachers? That is also not a typical practice to have co-teachers in electives, even if they're graduation requirements. The idea is how can we differentiate and make these courses more accessible to the students? So working with Hagen in terms of our instructional delivery, how can we provide support to the teachers to best support our students? When we talk about dual language or ENL, in the absence or potential absence of a dual language coordinator, can we minimize that role to the chair position? Can we provide additional sort of support in other ways? That's what we have to look at. When we talk about special education, we're mandated, so those supports aren't really sort of changing. And aside from that, we're not reducing any programs. We're still going to be offering art. If there's a reduction in librarians or information specialists, as I was talking about Mr. Grady, can we keep librarians and split them between the buildings so they still can have access to programs and perhaps maintain our librarians or information specialists at the high school or intermediate level? But it runs like the whole gamut. I don't know if that answers that question.
Okay, but can I go to my next question, which is, could you elaborate just a little bit about or emphasize the fact that the transportation increase and the health insurance increase basically popped up after the initial budget presentation process started, because we had our transportation contract that had been increased, I believe it was
Initially, 9% for the contract, but 16% because of the additional use of
right.
buses.
And that came up after our budget process started.
Correct.
So that basically sprung on us in the middle of your plan.
Right.
In addition, we had the health insurance increase.
Right.
It was way beyond any
Right.
expected percent increase.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we had a mid-year increase this year that we had budgeted for 5%. We weren't expected to rise another 10% for the next school year.
And, so my final question is really going to be the one that you've heard me ask you every year. In spite of this very difficult situation, are we still going to be able to provide the programs and services to our kids that we're currently providing, as well as the new classes at the high school that were the subject of our presentation a couple of meetings ago?
That is correct.
Ms. Odegon.
So, I'm just gonna say for me, and I have to say I've got tears in my eyes about this. This seems to be a situation where it's out of our control. It's not anything that our district did to create this situation. It was a combination of the way the state does our funding and the way these increased costs went up in a way that were unanticipated. And unless there is no way to find more money, and from what you presented, there's been an exhaustive look at it, we're left with the only opportunity of having the staff reduction that you have described to us. And that puts us in a very awful situation that I don't see a choice in order to keep us presenting to the taxpayers a budget that is within the tax cap. I don't see anything other than the alternative of what you presented.
Trustee Hayes, if there was an alternative or I felt any confidence as an alternative, I'd be proposing it. I'd be the first one to be proposing it. Not that that's going to make anybody feel better. You know, I engage in conversations with other superintendents. There are multiple school districts going through this. I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges, but this is not also unique to us. This has been sort of a remarkable year. Not remarkable in a good way. I value teachers, and again, school districts don't reduce staff because we want to operate in a leaner fashion. We don't. Staff cuts is basically the last thing you do. That's why even with declining enrollment, if you can sustain a certain amount of staff, you maintain it. If our K-3 classrooms average in some of our buildings about 18 students or 16 students and you can maintain it, why not? But this year, the situation is real. And we cannot increase, despite people's beliefs, why not just increase the tax cap? People are in financial distress. We also have to be mindful of our taxpayers. And so we have to be mindful of our taxpayers as well. That's part of our sort of fiduciary responsibility. Less than 0.5% or 46% of our revenue comes from our taxpayers. It'd be an undue burden to put the entire burden on the taxpayers with the staffing levels that are not sustainable moving into the future. How many subsequent years of piercing the cap are we going to propose to keep staffing levels that don't really match up with our enrollment? And again, I'm saying that not because I don't value teachers. I'm saying that because the situation, the reality of our situation has gotten to us to this point.
So, Almost did you have anything else? Ms. Felicia, that's all.
Yes, thank you. Can't see the superintendent. Thank you. I'd like to go back to your slide number 13. Actually, I think you have that slide twice, right? That was in the beginning and the end.
Yes.
Where you say it's a careful and comprehensive analysis. And I'd like to thank Trustee Hayes for her comments. And she sells herself short. Ms. Hayes asked for a special Board of Directors meeting, Board of Trustees meeting, to go through the budget more, so that we could look at other ways that we could, to look at the budget, to see if there were other ways in which we could find some savings. We get a treasurer's report every month. It's 50-some odd pages long. We did not have that special meeting.
Point of clarification.
I'm sorry.
The request of the meeting was not to discuss the budget.
Okay.
There was no request at a special meeting for budgetary purposes. Like any trustee, Mr. Otakon, and then what is it, 10 times? You're the only person who gets to talk here? Stop interrupting people. There's rules, no, you're not going to talk.
All right, let me clarify my statement. The request of the meeting was for something else. I answered the request to say that I was willing to meet for the purposes of budget strategies. That's just to clarify. I was willing to meet more because I didn't feel like we were meeting enough about the budget. And that we were needing to meet with the superintendent individually about budget issues. I am frustrated over the process here, and the question I have for the superintendent here, the comprehensive analysis that you did, and the people that you met with. You said you met with consultants. What consultants did you meet with, and input did you get from professionals in education and various stakeholders?
Sure. So basically, I want to make a point of clarification. At each step of the budget process, we made ourselves available for trustees. We had many individual meetings where I went over our budget lines. We also provided itemized budget lines for our entire budget at each step of the process. In terms of the consultants we work with, we have a transportation consultant, we have financial advisors, we have internal auditors. We also reach out to
Who are they? Who were the financial advisors? Who were they?
Mr. Can you help with the name? I don't know the name of the firm off the top of my head.
I don't think they can hear. I don't think the audience can hear.
Well, I think so. The name I can provide the names of those consultants in our update. So.
But I'd like them now. We have to vote on this budget now.
Our internal auditors are Naraki Smith.
Okay, and what did they advise you?
So we look at all of our sort of expenditures and what can be cut and what is sustainable. So when we look at with the transportation consultant, which is an individual, they look at busing routes, they help with the negotiations. We also work with the consultant, and I apologize for not committing these names to memory, that helps us maximize our state aid. In terms of state professionals in education, it's other superintendents, our professional coaches. I can give individual names for those people, but it's inconsequential. We work with other business officials. We also have our associations. We have the Suffolk County School Superintendents Association. We have ASBO, which is the Business Association. We talk to all these people throughout this entire process. In fact, tomorrow I have a conference with Suffolk County Superintendents to talk about aid, budgetary woes. That's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow is too late.
But it's been going on for It's been going on, my word. It's been on.
Mr. Santana, with all due respect, you know I've been frustrated with this process from the beginning. The treasurer's report that I referred to before has, and I think we spend too little time on the process. Going forward, we need a full report on this treasurer's report. We need to be given a full report. We need to go through it every meeting that it's issued to us, line by line on what's in it. For example, we go through it. If every single budget line is in here. Contracted building and ground services, salary of responders, every single budget line is in here. Personnel service, supervision of regular school, $4.6 million. And it goes through how much is in the budget, how much adjustments have to be made to it, expenses that are encumbered. This is the last one, the two budgets that we approved tonight, the two treasurer's report we approved tonight. The last one we approved was February. So in here, and the encumbered money that is approved should be taking us through the end of the school year. The last page, because there was a glitch in the system, the The last page wasn't given to us until what, 2 days ago? It was page 57. Gives us a balanced report. We also take from this report, we put a fund balance into the next year's budget of $4 million. So we have to make sure that we don't spend $4 million, so it gets put into this year's budget, correct? Did we do that?
We put it into the budget. What we're going to end up, we're not going to know until the end of the school year when we get, let me finish. So when we finalize our fund balance projections for come, we're filing the reports in a timely fashion. So whether or not we're going to go over every single budget line, that'd be sort of a monstrous task to accomplish. Like you said, it's 57 pages long. Trustees are always welcome to ask questions about our treasurer's report. The treasurer.
Do I do that? Do I do that about this report?
You did in last meeting, yes.
Do I do it on a regular basis?
At times, yes.
I do. I do it on a regular basis. And even that's not enough. Because it's a very cumbersome report, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think we spend enough time, I don't think the Board of Education spends enough time to understand this report, because there's a lot of lines in this report. And this table is not as big as my dining room table. And that's why I have tables all over the place. But I have green lines in this report to see, there's many lines in here. Forster homeless tuition regular school. It budgeted $45,000. Adjusted budget, $45,000. Available, $45,000. Is there $45,000 in that line available?
Yes, basically a budget is a tool.
Would Mr. B know if there's $45,000 in that line?
So the budget is a tool. It doesn't represent actual money. It represents monies allocated for specific purposes. So we have to allocate certain funds for certain purposes. Whether or not they're used or not, we determine at the end of the year. So if we don't have to provide Forster home tuition in this current school year, that goes into our fund balance.
So that's what I'm asking. These professionals that you consulted with, did each and every one of those lines comb through?
We come through every budget line, yes.
Were all the lines that are going to be encumbered, everybody knows what encumbered means, so the money that you need to the end of the year gets put aside so that you don't use it. So I would assume that all the money, can a question be asked of Ms. McGee for this?
You can ask me, if they would answer.
This was, so all the money that is needed through the end of the year should have been encumbered for this report.
That's correct.
Okay. So we shouldn't be surprised that we, oh no, we have another expense.
Well, no, because things can happen. We stopped our purchasing in about end of February, but if something breaks down, if we have some sort of catastrophe in the school building, we have to respond to it. What's also mostly encumbered are all the costs associated with end-of-year activities like graduation. We haven't spent the money yet, it's being encumbered.
Here's another group of expenses that I highlighted. Library books. Now we're talking about accessing library specialists. Who's going to be responsible for the budget and expenses of library books?
So we have the curriculum office looking at, but one of the things that we're looking at in terms of reducing expenditures is whether or not we could do the moratorium of ordering new books for a year to reduce those expenses. So that's another budget line item that we looked at to reduce.
So that decision's been made or it hasn't been made?
No, we reduced the amount, not totally, but the amount of books. Because again, it's between what's ideal, what we want, and what's needed.
So with this budget, $147 million budget, the lines that are here, you went back into all of these lines, these budget lines, you appropriated each one of these budget lines.
We went through it, Ms. O'Hagan did it, she did it with related staff. We did it over a 2-week period, yes.
What I'd like to propose going forward for the trustees, this is something we can put on the agenda and talk about further. I think this report should be given to the board and actually gone through it, so that we know, so that this report is fully understood each and every time that it's given to us. As you see, it's given to us in a consent agenda. We don't discuss it. And I think that's wrong. I think we, having experienced this sudden onset of expenses that came onto us suddenly, as Ms. Hayes said, after the budget presentation started, we need to be more prepared the next time around so we're not blindsided. Also, the health consortium that we are in with 3 other school districts, is that what it is? I think we should be given quarterly reports on those meetings as well, so that we stay on top of what the costs are for those expenses as well. That's also something that we were, again, unaware and we were blindsided by it. As many people know, I was a former president for the civilian workers in Suffolk County, 6,000 active members, with 10 other unions in the county. We had 48,000 lives. In our consortium for the self-insured program, we met monthly and stayed on top of all the expenses there. So health insurance, very important to all the employees, something that we should stay on top of more regularly. And then we won't be blindsided in those situations. Third, where am I? The Blueprint Strategy Planning Day that we had with our strategic planning, you mentioned it in your report. Also think we really missed an opportunity here. You had on January 9th over about 70, 80 people together up at the high school that got together for the strategic planning with the mission statement, with the vision, talking about value, respect, giving, doing our very best, solution-oriented, equitability. Morale that day was at an all-time high. Putting that strategic plan together, again, we didn't know this was going to hit. And now I just feel all the money, effort, time, volunteer time that teachers, administrators gave, community members gave, to be there that day, to come together as one, as a team, united. I'm speechless. I'm really speechless as to the effort that went into that strategic planning that, to me, seems useless now. It really seems useless. And I'm frustrated with the process because I also asked, and I don't know why any board of education member, in asking for information to understand this process. And I explained to my Board of Education members earlier in an executive session that I was very much a part in 2012, a massive layoff in Suffolk County under the then County Executive Levy and County Executive Long. 370 layoffs. That was not a pretty situation and it was useless. And I worked very hard to get all those people their jobs back. And it was very disruptive and unnecessary. And I struggled to find the right words tonight for what was going to have to happen here. And I regret the process here, and I don't feel like the process was well thought out. The one document that I wanted, and not all my board members agree with me, that I wanted to see is I wanted to see an employee list of every job that we have in this school district. And I was denied seeing that list. And I can't wrap my head around not getting a full picture of where our employees are, what those titles are, so that I can get a grasp. When we asked the superintendent, when only one bargaining unit was being laid off or excess, whatever you want to call it, I wanted wanted to see where all the bargaining units, where all those titles were. And I was denied access to that list. And that's when I started to doubt this process. And don't respond, please don't respond, please don't respond, please. Please don't respond, I'm just sharing my feelings about the process. And so I'm struggling to find the words. I'm not a wordsmith. My good friend Ian is the wordsmith. I'm not a wordsmith. So I had to look for a book, and I picked up Amanda Gorman's book. And the only thing I can say tonight is our wonder is going to become your burden. And I'm sorry for that. As a Board of Education member, I would have to support the budget out there to support our school and our students. And I joke about how I make grandmother jokes because of the age group that I happen to be in. But there are, you know, as a teacher, how many grandmothers out there help their kids and their grandchildren in bringing their kids back and forth to school and acting to help their families. And they're the ones who come to me and bring their issues to me. And I take that with a great sense of pride. And like Ms. Hayes said, you know, when we took this job, we took it with a dual role or a triple role of not only the students, but the community and the taxpayer. And I'm very serious, you know, and I take my role seriously when those grandparents come to me with their issues. And believe me, there are plenty of them. And they have already come to me with these issues. And so I take it very seriously. And so I am not in support of the process that happened before you today. And I think there were better ways we could have gone about it. And and I know it bothers the board. I'm not saying it doesn't bother them. It bothers every single one of us. But I just have a personal reason as to why it bothers me the way it does. And I'm sorry that it had to happen this way. Those are the end of my comments. Thank you.
So, President King, if I could just respond. First and foremost, I found some of the comments on our strategic planning process a little disparaging to all the efforts we put into it. We provided the trustees with a draft copy of the final product. All the trustees had access to it. We also met with our local strategic planning committee to review the entire plan, to make any necessary edits. The reason we delayed the launching of it is because we've been focused on the budget process in the last couple of weeks. Initially, we wanted to launch it around this time, but we're just delaying it a little bit, not to diminish the work, and not to diminish the purpose of the plan, because the plan is going to be executed over the next 5 years. It includes actionable items that came from the community, our stakeholders, our teachers. That work wasn't for naught. That work is going to yield a product that you've seen a draft of. It doesn't take away from the work. We have to look at it, we have to unpack it, and present it to the board for adoption. Those are the next steps. Secondly, in terms of the budget lines, I have to say we provided detailed lists of all of our budget lines at each step of the budgetary process. Each of our presentations included our current project proposals, line by line. In terms of a staffing list, we didn't provide names of individuals. We have 5 collective bargaining units, and all the positions are listed. So the board has had access to that. And in our March 13th presentation, we actually had a breakdown of our staff per building. What was not included was a specific number of custodians and clerical. I give you that. We can provide that. But I don't want there to be sort of this notion that we're hiding information, because we're not. So staffing of our buildings is public information. We provided our staffing analysis on March 19th, which had a detail of all of our staffing per building, including support staff. We give you the total number of our custodians. If you like it by building, we can do that. But again, none of this information is going to impact our budget process or the situation we find ourselves now. We spared no expense in looking at every expenditure, looking at every contract, every consultant we work with that we paid for to see what was necessary to make those reductions before we looked at staffing cuts. So I just want to make that point of emphasis, because certainly I think personally that there's some sort of air of some impropriety when there isn't. So trustees have made a concerted effort to speak to me, to meet with me, to ask questions. I've had a lot of meetings with trustees to explain the budget process. I don't ever deny access to the trustees, but we've been as transparent as possible. And I apologize if my tone, but I'm probably, honestly, I do take it personally, and it's hurtful to hear those comments, because I think I've been transparent to the nth degree, and I respond to the trustees anytime the call is made.
Thank you, Mr. Santana. Any other comments from the, no? Yes, Mr. Barrett?
Yes, I do want to point out, obviously, the reduction in staff is incredible, but I also want to point out that we all know the reasons. They've gone over them, we went over them, we've all been aware of it. The moment it happened, or shortly thereafter, of the expenses that we're facing. It's not something that is, in my opinion, made up, and that is why I would be voting in favor of this budget. Not because it reduces staff, that's not why. It's because you have to be responsible with this funding and with the expenses that we're facing. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out.
Thank you. No other trustees will move on. Are we going? Sure.
I felt that the budget process was frustrating, but not the way Trustee Cooley described. It's frustrating to me to go through and see year after year the impact that the state budgeting system has on the school district's finances. And then to have us put in that position because the state budgeting requirements and not be able to address those popped up very large increases in transportation and health insurance, precisely because the state does not allow us to maintain enough money in reserve in order to meet expenses that are unexpected like that. That's where we are, that's the frustration to me. And to be put into this position by the system, not by any individual at this table or anybody who works here, and then make a decision that tears at my heart and the heart of many other people in the room is just, it's personally devastating, and it's very difficult for everybody who's here tonight and who may be listening at home.
Thank you. Ms. Flynn, you guys do the rest of the, I'm going to do the roll now. You want me to read the, I gotta get the motion in a second, right? You want to read the resolution, you want me to? Oh. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts an expenditure appropriation of $147,164,277 to operate the schools for the 2025-2026 fiscal school year, and present such appropriation to the district residents for approval on May 20th, 2025. May full roll.
Yay.
With a heavy R, yay.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on, item number 2. There's one discussion item for the other 2 votes. That was a recommendation of the trustees. I'm asking these to be voted on. What I'm asking is item number 4. I don't think it needs to be voted on. It's just discussion. So we want to take that now and then vote on the other 2 items. Does anybody want to do the next 2 separately? Or can I do them together? They are the Eastern Suffolk BOCES administrative budget and the slate of candidates. Any objection to doing them together? No, we're gonna do, so we'll do 2 and 3 together. Yeah, those will be around, okay. Can I have a motion, items F2 and F3? Mr. Little, seconded by Mr. Barry, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Item number 4, letters of education leaders. Ms. Hayes, did you want to speak on this?
I'll start.
Great.
A week and a half ago, we got the weekly update from the executive director of the New York State School Boards Association. And in it, it had a call to action requesting that each board member consider basically informing our local federal legislators about our concern about some of the issues that are in the federal budget process that's going on right now. And in particular, it's the one where there's a new idea that there'll be a new system set up so that people can get 100% tax credit for monies that they donate into this system. It's then used for private school tuition assistance. And the view of the New York State School Boards Association is that this will have a detrimental impact upon public schools, which will further impact the situation that we're in right now. And there is also an association that is working out of the NYU Steinhardt department, which is seeking input from boards and board members, again, in support of public education. And I think that it's very worthwhile for us to support our New York State School Boards Association in this call. There's a link in the letter. It makes it easy to for each of us to vote and give our opinion about it. And I asked to have posted supporting information from the organization at NYU, and there are a lot of things there. It takes a long time to read through it, and I appreciated the fact that our School Boards Association had gone through it and distilled everything and made the recommendation to us to please take action. And I wanted to ask all the board members to do that.
Just for some clarification, if I may, there is a legislation in Washington. It's called the Educational Choice for Children Act. And it is, it has a potential to set $136 billion of public funds to private schools by way of vouchers and tax credits. So this advocacy is asking us to sign on a letter to our local member of Congress to object to that. Me personally, I have no issue. I think this is, they're asking for boards to do this, not individual trustees.
Well, I think
So I think we can do either one.
we can, or to vote.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from the New York State School Boards Association, but there's also this alliance where individual educators and community members and other people who support public education can express their concern about this budget, the budget. So,
So I guess I would just, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, I just would ask the board if there is any objection to this letter. There's a form letter here which we can use, which administrators would have to help us fill in some of the blanks. Is there any objection from trustees to sending this letter to Congressman Garber? Okay, so we'll work on that. The administration will work on filling in those blanks, and we'll get that sent over to Congressman Garber as well. It might also be worthy to trustee the meetings as well. I'm sorry, I said it might be worthy to try to schedule a meeting with Congressman Garbarino. Okay, thank you. Moving on to, we finished the consent agenda. Chief, you want to do, any objection to G, H, and I together?
Yes, I have an objection.
For which?
For H.
H, you want that separate? Okay, great. So let's just do them separately.
The administration recommends the approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
Can I have a motion G1 and 2? Mr. Lowell, seconded by Mr. Barry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. H, personnel.
The administration recommends the approval of personnel changes reflected in H1 through H7.
H1 through 7, can I have a motion? Mr. Kavanaugh, seconded by Mr. Barry. Discussion?
Discussion?
Ms. Lees.
On H3, 3, 1, 2, and 3. We just approved a budget that calls for layoffs in 2 of the 3 positions that are being proposed to hire. In 3.1 and 3.2, and then an additional position that doesn't call for layoffs in this particular bargaining unit. Why are we hiring if we just approved a budget that calls for layoffs?
Those monitoring positions are mandated by special ed.
I have trouble hearing.
There's a mandate from the state on special ed.
Thank you for amplifying that, because I'm
Or-
not.
It's a tough place to meet.
And then on the third position, there's an absolute need to hire in that position, even though we just called for layoffs?
Absolutely. This avoids us using Proprio, which is the translating service, or Frankie Long, and Washington contingent Spanish speaking students.
Okay, and we have the ability to sustain that position?
Yes, CSEA is in touch with the exception of one retirement that we're not replacing.
I'm reluctant to feel comfortable with that at this time. All right, thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, any other further comments? All those in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries. One abstention.
All right, the administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I-1 through I-43.
Can I have a motion? Mr. Lello, seconded by Mr. Barry. Any discussion?
Discussion?
Ms. Felice?
Does the contract have the ability to sustain the cost of these consultant contracts?
Yes, they're budgeted for.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Public commentary for non-agenda. This is an agenda item, but we'll certainly allow you to speak, Mr. Otakon. You have 3 minutes. We can have somebody help with that. It's not on.
Tonight, our BOE voted to destabilize our children's education. You want to talk to me about decorum, but you refuse to have an honest conversation about our district's budget needs. Our superintendent tells us that, each meeting that despite the loss of 40 educators, quote, we will maintain programs. Our Board of Education president, Mr. Piccini, tells me the proposed budget is, quote, adequate to educate our students and increase performance. In what world does laying off 40 educators increase performance, Mr. Piccini? This is completely false. In real dollar terms, our post-pandemic curriculum budget has declined more than the decline in enrollment. These 40 educators are doing work. Superintendent Santana, how does losing a math teacher improve our math education? Make it make sense. Our district has many strengths, but it has many areas of improvement. We have declining graduation rates, the second highest absenteeism rate in Long Island, second lowest New York State math assessment proficiency score in Long Island, the lowest New York State English proficiency score, wide discrepancies in postgraduate outcomes. We have a superintendent who talks about the needs of the taxpayer, but then tries to scare this board by saying the only options are a 3.48% tax increase or a 10% tax increase. This is not honest, Superintendent Santana. Why aren't we having a conversation with projections of a 5.5% increase? We'll put another $1.4 million each year into our budget. This will still involve hard cuts, but it would also save educator jobs. Why wasn't this ever on the table? Why wasn't this discussed? Our last budget passed something like 900 to 350, over 70%. As a community, we have to be honest about what are the impacts of these cuts to our children, to our goals, which you have not been, Superintendent Santana. You are not being honest with us on multiple fronts. You are not transparent, and you have not been honest. And take it personally, because this is a personal thing. You are undermining our children's education when they need it the most. And the board is being led by the nose with this. It's really unfortunate that there's no advocacy here for our kids. And I will remember this for all of us, because when we look back and think, what could we have done more for our children? I will remind everybody that this board undermined our children's education. You know, this should have been dead on arrival tonight. I'm amazed that it passed. But I want to remind the board, our goal is to ensure, the board's stated goal is to ensure that each of our students is academically prepared to succeed in college, career, life, and the global economy. And I want you to ask yourself tonight, did you do that? Or was there another way to do that? And there definitely was another way to do it. You refused to do it despite multiple requests, despite multiple parent emails, and you've turned your back on our community.
Any more remarks, trustees? I'll take a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion? Mr. Wolf, seconded by Ms. Kavanaugh. All those in favor? Motion carries. Meeting's over. Good night.